Happy birthday to the channel, happy birthday to you, and happy birthday to me. It has been an amazing 2 years on YouTube so far, and to celebrate this, you got to pick what kind of video we're doing today. So I'm answering all of your questions. From favorite book recommendations to how it all started, this Q&A is for you, all of the amazing subscribers who have followed me and supported me on this journey. And it doesn't matter whether you're a long-time follower or just discovering the channel, just join in for the fun and maybe get some bookish insights. These are your questions, and remember, you brought this on yourself. And the first question is from Game Guru, and they ask if there was one book or one author you had to read over and over again for the rest of your life, which one would it be? I guess we're diving just straight in, so let's go. Reading just one book for the rest of my life does seem a bit repetitive, so I think I will go with the one author. I think I would be looking for an author who changes things up, who tries different things, different genres, different formats, maybe poetry, novels. And yes, R.F. Kuang comes to mind, really. She has been alternating between genres for the last few years. First we had the Poppy Wars, which is like epic fantasy, and then came Babel, which is dark academia. Then there was Yellowface, which is far more contemporary. So yeah, I would go with an author like R.F. Kuang who keeps on changing things up and who isn't afraid of trying things. She has proven to be incredibly versatile, and I think it would be very interesting to see what she comes up with next. I still hope and predict that one day she will try her hand at a murder mystery novel. I happen to know that R.F. Kuang is a huge Agatha Christie fan, just like me. And I really hope, I really want to see what she would do with a genre like crime mystery. So yeah, absolutely. If I had to pick one author that I had to read over and over again, R.F. Kuang, why not? I love how she alternates things, how she writes what she wants to write, and yeah, there we have it. Rebecca Kuang. The next question is by Anureta. Do famous writers also cringe their works as a byproduct of their own age and growth, or is that against the philosophy of timeless creation? Discuss. I didn't expect I had to write an essay today, but yeah, let's give it a try. I do think that even famous writers do cringe at their very early work, like we all do, especially after years and years of growing, gaining more experience of life and of authorship. Writing is a craft that evolves over time, and I do think that authors, especially after a career of decades, that they will look back with all of their newly gained experience and see what they would have done differently. A bit like my first video, really. Now, I don't think that this is a sign that their earlier works were bad per se. This is just a sign of how far they have come as a writer, as an author. And I'm immediately thinking of authors like Agatha Christie again, who was really fed up with Hercule Poirot by the end, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wanted to kill off Sherlock Holmes, but the public wouldn't let him. I think in these cases, both authors had a career that spanned, again, decades. They had changed, life had changed them, they had gained a lot of experience, but their characters had basically stayed the same. And if you change and you still have to spend all of this time with those same characters, I can see how they get fed up with them. Now, that being said, authors maybe cringe about their earlier work, but the public necessarily doesn't. And in the end, it is a book-selling game, so it doesn't matter what the author thinks. If the book sells, the book sells. I guess we have to give the people what they want. Next question is by Adrian McMahon. What was the book that ignited it all, that ignited this love for reading? And for them, it was the fantastic Mr. Fox by Roald Dahl and Schindler's List at a later age. Both excellent books, by the way. I've always been a reader for as long as I can remember. I remember going to the library each week. I read a lot of Roald Dahl. I read a lot of Anthony Horowitz. He had his Greek retellings. He had Robin Hood retellings. Absolutely gobbled those books up. My earliest memory of a book that I absolutely loved reading and that has always stayed with me was, let me see if I can find it. Still have it. It's this one. It is a Dutch copy of Jules Verne's, I think it is called The Mysterious Island in English. And this book was gifted to me, I think I must have been 8, 9, maybe 10. It was a school holiday and I was at home sick with the flu. Now, normally I would be outside playing with my friends, kicking a ball, riding our bikes, whatever. But I had the flu and I had a fever, was really sick and had to stay on the couch. School holiday ruined. Until a neighbor who took pity on me came to visit me, and she had bought me this book, which was quite a daunting size for a young reader. And yeah, there was nothing else to do but eat, sleep, and read. So yeah, I rinsed and repeated all week long. And boy, this book really triggered something inside me. I resonated with the story. It is the story of prisoners of war. They escaped their prisoner camp by hijacking a hot air balloon, if I remember correctly, and they crashed their balloon somewhere on a remote island in the South Pacific. And I don't remember much anymore from that week, except from being on the couch and just being swept away to that remote island. I still remember the surprise and the joy because, and this is a children's book, so I will spoil it, but there is this mysterious stranger on the island. They never get to see him, but he leaves them medicines when someone is sick. And in the end, they do find out who he is, and it is actually Captain Nemo. So this book has a huge Captain Nemo cameo, I guess, and I had read Leagues Under the Sea. So yeah, absolutely blew my mind. Loved this book, and it is one of my earliest, very vivid memories of reading. And from there on, it all went to shambles. I went to study languages. I specialized in literature, both Dutch and English literature. Wrote my dissertation on teaching literature in schools. Yeah, from there on, it is all books, and I actually never stopped reading. And yeah, there are many books I still remember reading as a child, but this one, I think this one is the culprit. Then my messy bookshelf asks me, what is the most boring book you've ever read? Now, I don't think they can retract my degrees after all this time, so yeah, it's safe to tell this story. But when I was, I think, in my second year, and we did Dutch literature, Dutch classical literature, and we had a required reading list of about 20 books. Now, 20 books required reading just for one subject, because we also did English literature, is quite a lot. But the rule was, if they ever found out during your examinations that there was one book that you hadn't read, then it was game over. You had to return in September, you would flunk your exams, so yeah, not reading a book was not done. There was one Dutch classic, however, 19th century classic, a bit of a Jane Austen-like Dutch novel, really big book. I don't owe a copy anymore because from the day I was done, I just chucked it out. And that book was called Eline Vere. And Eline Vere was one of the books on the required reading list and is an absolute dragon of a book. I was ever so bored. I was struggling. It has 800 pages or something, and by page 120 I was absolutely done with the book, but I couldn't risk not reading it. Now, it was already clear that I was not going to finish it, so my solution was to go to the local library where they rented out the film adaptation. Again, most boring film I've ever seen, 3 hours or something, but at least I knew what it was all about, what was going to happen, what the plot was, so I could bluff my way through the examination if it came up. So yeah, that day I arrived at my examination. It was an oral one, and the first question that the professor asked me was your very question. Which is the book that you dislike the most? And this was a bit of a conundrum, because I could very honestly say that it was Eline Vere, but that would risk that he was going to ask even more questions about it. I could also lie and pick another book, but then there would be still the risk that Eline Vere would come up. So I decided to be honest, that well, Eline Vere wasn't for me, absolutely hated that book. And he simply said, good, let's not talk about it then. Examination saved, and I never ever returned to Eline Vere ever again. And then Orange Library asks me, do we enjoy spicy food? I would love to answer yes, but let's be honest. I'm a white guy. My definition of spicy food is meek at best. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy things that taste strongly. I do enjoy things like wasabi. I do enjoy a good mustard, like the real French Dijon mustard that clears your sinuses from the moment that you get that kick. But apart from that, I think it is safe to say I'm a total wuss when it comes to spicy food. Whenever I go out to a restaurant where they serve like Asian cuisine or something Mexican or Indian, and they have these like little spiciness scales with the peppers next to the menu, I will always pick a very, very mild dish. So yeah, let's say I do enjoy a bit of a kick, but that's as far as I'm daring to go. If you're liking this Q&A so far, let me know by hitting that like button. And if there are some burning questions that I'm not answering today, then do leave them in the comments down below. I will happily answer them afterwards. Now keep watching, because the next question is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. Next question is by Viva Story. What contemporary novels do you think will become classics, and how long does it take for a book to become a classic? Right. Now, how long? Let's start with that one. I think it depends on your definition of a classic. Everything before the Second World War are simply classics. And then up to the 70s, kinda, I would call them modern classics. And from there on, 80s, 90s and so forth, we have contemporary classics. I think I did a video on contemporary classics way back in the early days. I will link it somewhere up here, and you can have a look for yourself. Now, classics are more than just old books, so which books do I think that will become classics? Meaning books that I think people will still be reading and revisiting and discussing in 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now. Right away, I think of a book like The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I'm thinking books by Umberto Eco, Name of the Rose, Foucault's Pendulum. I'm thinking Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. Salman Rushdie, definitely, with all of the political upheaval attached to his books. Stephen King as an example of classical horror. I also think, and this is something I find really interesting, that new formats will enter our collective classical mind. We might start to think of graphical novels as classics. Maus by Spiegelman, for example. Persepolis by Marianne Satrapi. These are graphic novels that can easily compete with the best novels out there. And let's be very honest and very clear about this. We always tend to think of classics as this highbrow, very complex literature. But history teaches us otherwise. So, and I do shudder to say it, but who knows? Books like the Twilight series, who knows? Maybe 50 Shades of Grey will become examples of classics. Books like the Harry Potter series, they might all be still very popular in many decades from now. So yeah, who knows what people will be reading in the future. Then Triple Roux asks what, in my opinion, makes a book atmospheric and linger long after reading, and do I have some examples? I think there's two things. I think there is the book itself, and I think it is the when and where that you read it. The when and where you read it is simple, I guess. Sometimes books resonate really deeply with you because you're reading it at the right or the wrong time. Maybe you're going through a breakup, maybe you're grieving because of a loss, or maybe you've just graduated and having the summer of a lifetime, and if you then encounter the right book, it just hits on a different level. It's almost as if books are enhancing, are enriching the experience, make it more impactful. And yeah, those are of course the books that we will always remember and that will stay with us. And this is very personally, of course. For me, a few years back when I turned 40, we were having our wedding anniversary and we decided to take a bit of a travel. We decided to take the Orient Express on the classical line from Paris to Istanbul. And of course I took the book. And being able to read Murder on the Orient Express in this extraordinary place, this place where it's all about and being able to revisit the things in the books. All of a sudden I understood the sounds that people in the cabin next to you make at night. All of a sudden I had a hook I could hang my pocket watch from. All of a sudden I was dining in these cars that Poirot was dining in the book. Yeah, it absolutely enhanced both the book and the experience itself. It really amped up the atmosphere of the book, being able to just look around and see what I was reading about. And then there is the book itself. I think you have to have a personal connection with a book. Whether it is joy or grief or sadness, rage even. If you find yourself reflected in the story, if you find yourself reflected in the characters, then this book will absolutely resonate with you. Books that evoke strong emotions tend to stick with us. Only a few days ago, my 11-year-old son was reading the latest James Norbury, The Dog Who Followed the Moon, and without spoiling it, it is a sad story. It is a really sad story, and all of a sudden, it was way past his bedtime. He was downstairs again, tears just flowing freely. He was devastated because this book had absolutely destroyed him. And that's okay. Those are the books that we will remember. Now, I took him upstairs again, I calmed him down, and I volunteered to stay with him to finish the book because he was only halfway through the story. And we finished the book together. There were still tears, but again, that's okay. We talked about it, we talked about death, we talked about grief. And that's the safe thing of a book. If it really hits you too hard, you can always close it and stop. Maybe revisit it the next time. But even now, a few days later, the tears are gone, and he actually confided in me that although he still thinks it is a very sad book, he did see the beauty in it. And I think this is a book that will absolutely stay with him because of that emotional connection, because it brought him so much grief. It reminded him of pets long dead now, and it all came back again. And yeah, I think those are the books that absolutely stay with us and resonate with us. And I think the same goes for beauty in books as well. Distinct writing style, eloquent prose are really beautiful. Words are really something that can elevate a story. Memorable lines, passages, the things you want to underline, the things you want to annotate and take out of the book and put them on a wall and just live them. And of course, the absolute best books are the books that combine all of these things. And then we have Campesino N, who asks me, do I have a favorite passage or a sentence of a novel? What do you mean, just one? Now, to be honest, I'm not big on quotes, really. I mean, quotes are often just snippets of a text that are ripped out of their context and put against the wall as a motivational poster, and it does disrespect the text a bit. Now, as for passages, there are some beautiful and impactful passages that I love from many books. If I have to think of one, there is this passage in Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke, in which Rilke himself, the poet, explains his stance on gender equality. Now, do keep in mind that this book and these letters were written in the very begin years of the 1900s. I think 1902, 1903, something like that. But let me just read you the passage. So yeah, have my copy here. Let's go. One day, and there are already reliable signs which speak for it and which begin to spread their light, especially in the northern countries, one day there will be girls and women whose name will no longer just signify the opposite of the male, but something in their own right. Something which does not make one think of any supplement or limit, but only of life and existence, the female human being. This step forward, at first right against the will of the men who are left behind, will transform the experience of love, which is now full of error, alter it root and branch, reshape it into a relationship between two human beings, and no longer between a man and a woman. I've always been baffled of how today and how modern and contemporary this passage feels. This text is more than 100 years old and could easily have been written today. So yeah, for now, this passage from Rilke will be my answer, and I do already know that from the moment I stop filming, I will come up with 10 more or so. But for now, let's go with Rilke. Then Araceli asks me about my favorite Latino American authors, or which authors from Latin America I would still want to read. Immediately, classics come to mind. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, I talked about 100 Years of Solitude just in last week's video. I absolutely lived that book for a long time when I was studying. Isabel Allende comes to mind, The House of the Spirits, Paula, books like that. I have absolutely been into the poetry of Pablo Neruda. I was first introduced to his poetry through an art project in which they put his verses and his poetry of the Canto General on music. And yeah, after that I just went to the bookstore and bought some of his poetry, so Pablo Neruda. Down the rabbit hole of poetry we have Octavio Paz, we have Borges. Then let's try to come up with something more contemporary. I did really enjoy Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. She's an excellent crime writer, but her books also feel very genuine, if that makes any sense. Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia is still on my TBR. I'm really curious to read that one. So yeah, there are definitely some authors that come to mind, but I will be the first to acknowledge that I could have more Latino American authors in my on my shelf. So if you have any recommendations, I'm totally open to them. I would love to explore more, especially more contemporary Latino American authors, because especially lesser known names, indie authors, they do not always make it across the pond into bookstores here. So if you have any recommendations, I can hunt them down and maybe get to know them. Thank you all for your interesting questions and these amazing 2 years on YouTube. It wouldn't be the same without you. I think you guys gave me at least as much recommendations to read as I have given you, and I absolutely love it. Your support, your comments, your questions, your likes, they mean the world to me. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it that thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. As always, keep the conversation going in the comments. If there are any more questions that you might have, do ask them. I try to answer every single comment as always. And yeah, next week I'll be back with more regular bookish content. And in the meantime, you can always watch this video.